me, baby. Your love for me was strong. When I woke up this morning, your big words were gone, but that's alright. I know you love another man, that's alright. Well, still now, every now and then I wonder who's loving you tonight. Take it, Ricky. All right, folks, welcome back. This is episode 17. Yes, I remembered. Yes, I did. And last week, I had a rock and roll star. This week, I have a king. So don't ever accuse me of not bringing the best and the brightest in the greater Boston area. Again, my name is Bill McGold-riffs, and welcome to McGold-riffs. And here today, I have Mr. Ricky King Russell, and we're going to get into the King thing because it's in parentheses or something. I don't know if it's his middle name or if he invented that or if he actually is a king of some sort of the south part of Boston. Entirely possible. But here, let me give you a little background and a bio on Ricky here. In these days of sampled and computer-generated music, it is refreshing to hear music the way it is meant to be played, honestly and with soul, as you just heard right there. Just tasty, the way you're supposed to be playing the blues right there. Ricky King Russell is one of blues' most seasoned performers and brightest talents. Taking his cue from blues masters past and present, Ricky plays with passion and style. His 4 CDs are radio favorites, and the song "Big Boy" has been featured on the House of Blues Radio Hour with Dan Aykroyd, whom I love, and whom I do believe is actually a true blues believer and lover. If you remember him from the Blues Brothers, my favorite movie of all time next to Top Gun. Okay, Ricky is a guitarist, vocalist, songwriter, 55-year musician. I think you beat me on that one, brother. With a list of credits and accomplishments too long to list here. Described as volcanic by the Boston Globe, Ricky always delivers from the heart. He has appeared with such notable as David Honey Boy Edwards, John Lee Hooker, huge name, Eddie Clearwater, Mighty Sam McLean, Ronnie Earl, Jerry Portnoy, Duke Robillard, another monster around here that if you know Duke, I'd like to get him on the show. He's not replying back to me. Kim Wilson, Tommy Shannon, and Chris Layton of Double Trouble. Susan Tedeschi, who's one of my favorite also, and also a local talent from the South Shore area of the greater Boston area. Tony Lynn, Washington, Room Full of Blues, one of my favorites. I love those guys. I forget the singer's name, but I love him. James Montgomery, whom I've jammed with, and I love James. And Sugar Ray Norcia, Debbie Davis, Steve Miller, anyone else who you haven't played with. Yeah. He was a featured artist in the original House of Blues over in Cambridge, which I love that little place over there.
We opened it to the public.
That was like a house type thing, right? Yeah, cool. And Harvard University has bestowed upon him an honorary doctorate of blues. So I should be calling you Dr. King?
You can do that.
I think that's taken, man. Okay, so here we go here.
Let's rock.
Let's rock. Okay, tell me the Ricky story. Where are you from?
Okay.
And how did this happen?
Actually, I was born in Newton, Massachusetts. And in the Eisenhower administration.
Me too. I'm an Eisenhower baby as well.
Right. So my family settled in Millis, not too far from here.
Right.
Not too far from here in Norfolk. So my oldest sibling's boyfriend at the time, for whatever reason, got into black music in the 50s. So the quick story is this. There's a phenomenon in the radio world called skip. And what happens to AM radio stations primarily in the 50s would go from sunrise to sunset.
Right, I remember that.
That means that frequency that radio station was on would be vacant after sunset. Mm-hmm. So there was a huge radio station down in Nashville that had a very powerful transmitter, and the signal would bounce off the ionosphere, bounce off the Earth, bounce off the ionosphere. And if your frequency was close to it, you could pick that up.
Wow.
So you would, people in those days would hear radio stations from far away and hear music that they maybe local programming wasn't into. So at any rate, my brother-in-law, turned out to be my brother-in-law, would go search records out and bring them home and play them. And I would get to hear Jimmy Reed and John Lee Hooker and Ray Charles and such like in my living room. And myself being the youngest child in the family, being very interested in what my older siblings were doing.
Of course.
I sort of caught on to this, and it was always there. Lucky enough to hear radio through the mid-'50s into the early '60s, before the Beatles came.
Right.
So this was Chubby Checker or the Darvells or Gary and the U.S. Bonds and stuff like this. And those were Little Richard. Those were very fat-sounding records. Those were very, toothy productions in a sense. So the Beatles did come along in 1964, and I'll be candid with you. The first time I heard them, I thought it was kind of thin sounding, maybe a little tinny. It took a minute for me to latch onto it, but I got it quick enough.
Right.
Once we saw them on the Ed Sullivan Show,
right.
The game was pretty much over as far as that went.
Right.
Yeah. So I've been lucky to come up through a very good time.
Right, I agree. Compared to today's music, we won't get into the negative side of things.
I started as Ringo, 2 knitting needles on a turned over.
How old? Were you banging? 4 or 5? A little kid?
No. Let's see. So the Beatles officially came here in '64. So I was 12 or 13 at that point, and I had 2 cousins that I spent a lot of time with, and we put on our little Beatles shows for the family, miming to the record. And
you were banging
I was
the sticks.
two knitting needles,
right.
Mom's knitting needles on a clothes hamper. That was the drum. And the boys were standing there with tennis rackets, and we had Beatle wigs.
Cool.
Of course. And
Yeah.
we're trying to fill the bill. And then actually we got to start to play a little bit.
Cool.
I started taking lessons.
On drums?
No, actually, I figured out quick enough the guitar thing was what I really wanted. So there was why? Because John Lennon and Paul McCartney and George Harrison were out front. And
right. Said, okay, cool.
I gotta do this out front. The guy back there, he's cool, but nah.
Yeah.
So there was a boys' club we had moved to Dorchester, Massachusetts by then, and the little Italian gentleman teaching guitar at the boys' club was me for a dime or a quarter a lesson.
Right.
And tried to teach me how to play "Mary Had a Little Lamb," which Figured.
Big cowboy coat, CFG type thing?
Yeah, I didn't even get that far. It was more like he was trying to get me to read, and for some reason, reading music never stuck with me.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? I'm an ear guy. You know
Right,
what I mean?
right. As most of us are.
Yeah. So, times progressed, and I stayed with it.
Right, right. So we're talking mid-'60s to later '60s.
Yeah, later 60s. Okay, so in the late 60s, there was another blues boom, let's say, or the first big blues boom here that was truly a blues boom, brought by English guys, Eric Clapton, Jimmy Page,
Right.
Jeff Beck, Kim Simmons from Savoy Brown, those guys.
Right.
Hendrix.
People don't realize the Savoy Brown they were just a great blues band.
Oh,
and
at
people.
first.
I mean, they had Tell Mama, which I loved. The guitar parts on that are amazing.
And they're blues.
And that's what they're known for.
Yeah, but there was
they
a
were
whole,
real blues.
There was a
guys.
whole record before that, Fleetwood Mac.
Same thing, Peter Green.
Peter Green. Yeah.
Right, right.
So those are the things. With Hendrix scrambled everything. As far as what went and what didn't. The Doors kind of did in a similar way, and there was a fairly good amount of blues in Robbie Krieger's playing. You know what I mean?
That's a good riff.
Okay, so that love me two times.
Yeah.
It's a blues, right? Their big song on their first LP, Backdoor Man, is a Willie Dixon song. I am, yeah, backdoor man. I'm a backdoor man.
I never even thought about that.
Yeah.
As the Doors being a blues band.
But that's a Willie Dixon song. Same guy that wrote "I'm Your Hoochie Coochie Man" for Muddy Waters and a bunch of Howlin' Wolf songs and stuff like that. So
you're late, 15-ish years old, late 70s. So that's right when the Doors are coming out. So that was all
the
in
mid
influence.
'60s, yeah, mid
Jimmy
'60s, and then
Page
later
and
in the
Jeff Beck.
'60s, sort of the post Hendrix era. Hendrix and the Yardbirds and those guys, they sort of had a fair amount of blues stuff going on.
Yeah.
And then Zepp. There you go. And then the true blues boom to me was Zeppelin and the first Jeff Beck group with Rod Stewart and Fleetwood Mac, because not everybody was hip to the first John Mayall and the Blues Breakers record, which was the one that put Eric Clapton pretty much on the map.
Right, right.
His post Yardbirds phase.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So my guitar teacher turned me onto that, at that point. And but the whole deal was seeing those records and seeing the names under the songs. You'd see Dixon, you'd see Burnett, which was Howlin' Wolf, which you see Morganfield, who was Muddy Waters. You know what I mean? Then you start to learn how to go backwards. You know what I mean? And start to look for those things. A record that came out in the late '60s, early '70s, Fathers and Sons, was a true conglomeration of modern-ish blues guys with Muddy Waters and his band. You know what I mean? And it's kind of cool now that it happens that I work with Muddy's old harp player, Jerry Portnoy.
Now?
And have a band, yeah.
And he's local?
Yeah, he lives on the Cape.
Cool.
Yeah, so I'm his guy, you know what I mean? So it's like
I've seen some videos with him, a harp player, and I assume that's that guy.
That's the only guy I know that has a platinum record on his wall from the Cradle CD with Eric Clapton.
And what is a platinum record today? I don't think they have them anymore because no
know,
one's
man.
buying music.
But he's got one anyway. Yeah. So I was lucky enough to get hip to that idea as far as wait a second, blues and rock and roll, just like this. You know what I mean? Rock and roll might be played a little faster, but it's the same ideas, a lot of the same riffs, a lot of the same beginnings.
Yeah. And many of us, we didn't get, at least I didn't, you listen to Jeff Beck and you listen to Jimmy Page and you listen to Eric Clapton. And I was typical. I thought they invented it.
Yeah. Well, okay, everybody knows, most people that know Beck, for instance, his first disc, his first record had a version of Rock Me Baby on it. You know what I mean? And it's got a shuffle going. But if you hear B.B. King, he's on. Jeff didn't stray far from the tree.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
He knew what he was listening
And
to.
he was probably my favorite. Next to him and Jimmy Page, you know.
Yeah.
There was a lot of Led Zeppelin I didn't like, maybe the later kind of odder stuff. But I liked the riff stuff that they did in the first, second, and third album.
Well, they've had to pay off a couple of. They had to pay off Willie Dixon because copyright.
I'm
infringement.
sure. Yeah.
They had to pay off the estate of Sonny Boy Williamson too. That the Zeppelin tune, "Bring It On Home."
Yeah.
Baby. Wow. Well, that's "Bring It On Home" by Sonny Boy Williamson. Well,
it's epidemic right now on
Yeah.
a different subject with people getting sued. I listen to, I have Sirius radio on my car, and the volume's a great channel because it's a talk show too. It's for music, and they were talking about Lizzo, who's got a bunch of hits, and she's getting sued right now. She just broke, and she's already getting sued because such of the music is so derivative these days.
Who's those guys? They had to pay off big on somebody that they borrowed. Pretty much.
Yeah, that was Pharrell Williams.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that was
yeah.
about $7 million. Katy Perry recently.
Yeah.
I always say it's getting kind of crazy right now because I don't think you can copyright a style. If that was the case, then Chuck Berry should be suing everybody.
Yeah, right. I worked a little bit for I'm blanking on it right now, but Bo Diddley, and I was working with Bo Diddley when he got his big settlement. He had an attorney go after more than one person, and
because that's a group.
He cashed out, but there were some guys that were pretty blatant.
Copyright a group.
It wasn't so much. Part of it was with Bo. Part of it was copyright, and part of it was accounting.
Yeah,
the accounting was bad from the record company, and he didn't get his royalties and such the way he should have.
I forget what tune it was. It was Sam. I forget he's a famous young singer now, but he stole that. I won't back down, and they settled just out of court.
Yep.
Kind of a manly sort of just handshake. Hey, this
Sorry
is
about
exactly
that.
like this. Okay, I'll give you $1 million bucks.
I
haven't gotten one of those.
George Harrison and My Sweet Lord one. With the chiffons versus the chiffons.
Right, my sweet Lord. Yeah,
he's so fine.
La la la, and it's like I think it's like a 1 to a 4, major 7, which has been used a million times. But so let me get back to the Ricky story. So you're what, 15, 16 years old? You're really starting to get exposed to this
I'm growing into it. Got a chance to buy my first
Were you
Marshall.
still in Dorchester?
No, we had moved by then. My father had a lot of different kind of jobs, so we one of those situations that it seemed every 3 or 4 years we were moving someplace. By the time I was in my late teens, I was already working by then. I started gigging when I was 15 or 16.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes, I was the same way, 15 years old.
Yeah, so I started gigging around then, and the band I had, my first official band was called the Days and Nights, and we were playing Not Your Stepping Stone and stuff, hits of the day type of deal.
Not Your Stepping Stone was a Monkees song.
Hang On Sloopy by the McCoys.
Right.
All that.
Rick Derringer was in that band. I
that's
love
right.
Rick.
I saw him open for Hendrix at the Boston Garden.
Oh, really?
The McCoys, yeah.
So you're doing that stuff, and
So I'm doing that.
where were you living?
And by this point, we had moved to Chelsea because my dad had a job at a place in Chelsea, Mass.
Cool.
So we moved closer. I had already ran away from home once.
Oh, really?
And lived in Los Angeles with my sister in Hollywood in 1968. The Buffalo.
As like a kid? A little kid?
Yeah, 15, 16 years old.
Yeah.
The truant officer wanted to come and get me, but he didn't. And so I was there for
Were you playing?
Yeah, I was playing, but I took a job for the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner. That was the summer that Robert Kennedy got shot in Los Angeles.
Oh, my God. I remember that.
Yeah. And so the Buffalo Springfield, the pre-band before Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young.
Yeah, I love
They
them.
practiced right around the corner from my house.
Something happening here.
Well, something was happening there. It was called the Sunset Strip, and there was a lot of cool stuff going on
Did you
there.
get exposed to that at all? I mean, you were a little kid.
Yeah, well, I would, when I could get away from the house, I would venture up there or to Griffith Park because there was be-ins. happening in Griffith Park in 1968, in the summer of '68. It was also the summer of the Watts riots.
Right.
You know what I mean? Stuff like that. So I was there for that. And then when I moved home, we moved to Chelsea. Still had it going on, you know what I mean? And and that's sort of one of the first times I really decided to take a real turn at the blues. You know what I mean? It was popular because of Beck, because of Zeppelin, because of that whole thing. And there were like-minded people. My guitar teacher at the time was into that. So I had someplace to gather from technique-wise, you know, and have a couple of bands. I flipped and flopped between bass and guitar at that point. You know, I always had an affinity for the rhythm section. You know what I mean?
Cool.
That was kind of my deal. So, and bass is a good study for anybody. I would recommend that. You know, if you can play bass, then you'll play better guitar out there, kids.
And there are a lot of gigs for bass players.
And a lot of gigs for bass players. Bass players always work.
Yeah.
So at that point, you know, okay, so I got to see Zeppelin live 4 times. You know what I mean?
Did you see him at Boston Garden '68?
Yeah, I did.
I was there. I was there. MC5 opened. If you remember, there was a huge fight because MC5 was a hard rock band from Detroit, and they were followed by a lot of bikers. Kick Out the Jams was their big song, and they had like folding chairs in the garden, and it was a big fight with our Hells Angels, and they cleared it out, and Zeppelin played, and that was a pretty amazing time. I saw Hendrix that same summer. I saw Janis Joplin that same summer.
The concerts. The concerts in Harvard Square on the Cambridge Common.
On Cambridge Common. I was going to those.
I saw Jeff Beck there.
I grew up in Alston, which was walking distance to those. You saw Jeff Beck there?
There. Yeah,
no way.
He showed up. It's a Beautiful Day. I saw the Allman Brothers there. Yeah.
It's a Beautiful Day was a band, great band. I forget what was their big hit. What?
In a gilded cage.
I love that song.
On a winter's day.
Which again, I don't want to get sidetracked, but I really have an issue with the classic rock stations these days that essentially play 50 or 60 of the same songs. That's it. You'll never hear It's a Beautiful Day. You'll never hear Savoy Brown. You'll never hear
Quicksilver Messenger Service.
Quicksilver Messenger Service, which was a Bay Area band with all those Bay Area bands. With
but John Cipollino was a heavy guy for his day. You know what I mean? He was actually one of the San Francisco guys to me that could play.
I think I still probably have that album, and it's you know, I think they were a one-hit wonder. That was it, right?
Yeah, I couldn't even tell you their hit, but I know who they are. You know, I listened to some of the records at the time. And, you know, okay, so what's threaded through that? The Beatles are threaded through all of that. The Dave Clark Five are threaded all through that. Oh, they didn't last like the Beatles, you know, but the Stones sure did, you know.
Let me interrupt you. So tell me, you haven't mentioned the Stones up till now, which they considered themselves a blues band more than a pop band in the early 60s.
In blues circles, traditional guys like me are called blues Nazis.
Right, and I want to talk to you about that because there's a blues society in Boston, which I'm not part of. I'm sort of a generic guitar player.
I helped found the Boston Blues
Society.
So I'm a founding
go
member.
on your opinion then about
the Stones. Okay, so as far as the Stones at first didn't want to hear anything that wasn't blues.
Exactly.
They looked down their nose on pop bands of the time. You know, the
Beatles. I guess they became buddies.
Yeah, they did. The Beatles gave them their first hit. You know, I Want to Be Your Man.
I want to be your lover, baby. I want to be your man.
But if you hear the Stones version of it, Brian Jones is playing slide guitar. I want to be your lover, baby.
I'll have to listen to that again.
Man. It's not like the Ringo version at all. Not like that at all. And lacking in the same sort of production aesthetic of that. They were, you know, they didn't have George Martin on their side. They had Andrew Loog Oldham on their side, you know.
But I kind of like their rawness.
Oh yeah,
I really like that.
I never got caught up in the Beatles Stones argument. Let's say I loved them both.
I currently play in my duo a great version that I've really stolen from the Stones of Route 66. You little band roll the rest. And and if you listen to it, it's raw as raw can be.
Well, you know,
it's one take in a big room with everybody in there with a couple of hanging mics.
Taking their cue from Chuck Berry.
This fly must be a rock and roll lover or something.
Right, he does. He likes you. You must spell
so go on from there, man. So I want to continue on that Stones thing. So what else do you have to say about the Stones? You like them and you appreciated them?
I love them. Played a fair amount of their music. You know what I mean? Sure, played Honky Tonk Woman. It's a blues, man.
Right. Yeah.
if you think about
I
it.
saw them in Foxborough. They had to cancel because Mick had a heart issue, and I was easily able to get some tickets, and they sounded great.
Yeah.
And I heard an interview once with Keith Richards. He says, who's the greatest guitar people in the world? And it's like, hey, we don't get into that. All I know is what he said is, he, along with Ron Woods, are the best pair together,
Yeah.
and they fit
They
like
never-
gloves.
I don't think he and Brian Jones ever had that simpatico.
No way.
No, Brian was messing around with too much other stuff.
Yeah, marimbas and
After a while, he grew disinterested with guitar. I think what I mean, and drugs and stuff.
And it couldn't have been a better. I still consider Ron Wood the new guy.
Yeah,
And he came in like 1970.
But even the band he came from, Ron
Faces.
Wood. Well, he was
Right.
the bass player for the first Jeff Beck group. Ron
Oh,
Wood.
I did not know that.
Yeah, he tried
With
to-
Rod Stewart as the singer.
Singer, right? He tried
And
to buy.
I love.
He tried to buy a Lake Placid blue precision bass off me in the old EU Wurlitzer store that used to be downtown behind Jordan
No way.
Marsh.
When he walked in, did you know who he was?
Oh, of course. I had seen him the night before at the Boston Tea Party. They had played the Tea Party, and their RMI electric piano went up in smoke. So they were down at the music store trying to buy a piano. And you
Was it
want
the
to sell
Faces,
that?
or
mate?
was it
No.
the Stones?
No, it was the Rod Stewart group, but with the Faces. Yeah.
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 And to this day, I still love. I mean, there's a lot of music I don't like of Rod Stewart, but I love the raw stuff of Rod, and he can sing blues as well as anybody.
Yes, he can.
Yeah.
Yes, he can.
So,
Time is going on, and I'm getting more professional. And I got in a rock band that toured around here when you used to go into a club for a week,
right,
and stay there.
I used to love that because you could leave your stuff there,
Yep.
and just plug in that
Plug
next
in.
night.
The first night was always a little. You remember? Yeah,
And where were you playing?
Places like the Mohawk Club.
Before my time, yeah.
Where Fort Devens used to be in Devens.
Right,
Out
sure.
there. There was a circuit.
How old were you then?
Okay, so
like
I was my early 20s. Yeah, my early 20s, and we're out there doing.
Was that Martha Hopel?
David Bowie.
Oh, David Bowie, right.
Ziggy played guitar, jamming good.
Were you singing back then?
I was.
you
I
evolve
was
into
sing-
singing?
I evolved into singing because everybody wanted a high tenor. Robert Plant, all these guys. Yeah,
Who can do that?
I could
Only
never
one
do
guy
it.
in the world can do
I could
that
do that.
well.
And let me tell you, after the second Zeppelin tour, he couldn't do it anymore. He couldn't do it anymore. They faces wet from smiling. It brought everything
Yeah,
down.
yeah.
I couldn't do it. But I was the middle guy, the baritone. Sometimes they didn't really want me to. Most people didn't want me to sing very much because I didn't have that kind of voice.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, how I came. Okay, so that was sort of mid-era me. You know what I mean? And if you look up a band called Orphan Annie on YouTube.
Man, that sounds familiar.
Okay, so there's a track on YouTube of Orphan Annie playing a song named Jed, which was our first single. When you did singles.
Right.
A 45 RPM record.
What year?
73, 4 by then.
Right,
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was kind of as easy to. Cool. So sort of very easy.
Cool.
Very easy.
Did it get
yes.
airplay? Did you get on
Yeah,
BCN?
some.
Yeah.
Oh, there was a band that came later that actually had a big mattress song of the week thing.
Right, with Charles Lacquidera.
Yeah, there was a band called The Burn from Boston, what I
Right.
mean, that I was guitar playing in. So I went through my rock and roll thing and everything. But everybody that ever heard me said, "Wow, you sound like a bluesy guy. You sound bluesy. Yeah, that's a blues thing, huh?" And I'm trying to fit all this into Bad Company or into that, you know what I mean, thing. And it's easy to do that, you know what I mean.
Was it getting you down, not doing blues? Or?
No, I was out trying to make a living.
Right.
You know what I mean.
Were you able to support yourself during those days?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, I was before I got married to the same woman I'm with in 1975. So
Yeah, me it was 82, and I'm still married to the same.
woman. Yeah. So, I was trying to get. So we had a band house on Cape Cod, with the whole thing, because that band, Orphan Annie, had started on Cape Cod.
Orphan Annie, man. I know you played around. Did you play around? I grew up in Alston. Like
we
the Bunratties and the Rat and all that.
Yeah, we did play those places, but the Groggery was the
Groggery was right around the corner from my house.
We played there. We got thrown out of there because the guy said, "Hey, don't finish with a Stone song." So what did we play? Jumpin' Jack Flash. Yeah.
Why did he say that?
I don't know, because it would get people rowdy and there'd be a fight.
Because Austin was a Stones city, where Brighton, where my wife was from, was a. They were Kinks. We were Stones. And some Beatles, but it's interesting why he wouldn't. But the Groggery, I know that was a great place. Yeah. That was a happening place.
Well, yeah, there was a band I played with in that place, in between Orphan Annie and other things, called R&R, with a guy named Gary Earl, that Billy Squire actually almost joined after.
And he was a local guy.
Yeah, he was a local guy too. Yeah. So the guys from Aerosmith were living on Com Ave in a in a 3-bedroom. You know what I mean? Trying to get by.
And they were practicing, man, at a place called the Jim Did It Sign Company, in Union Square. I think he knew stuff, and that was one of these big sign companies, huge, and you could hear it outside.
Oh, you sure could.
I went to high school right near there, and you could just hear them rocking and roll.
Yeah. So as it happened, like everybody does, I got a day job.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Which is something that kills a lot of us musicians.
Kills a lot of us. So I ended up going back to school, and I went through when Jimmy Carter was president. There was a thing called the CETA program, CETA program, that I went through, and I got my license as a HVAC technician, a heat ventilator, and I ended up going to work for the company that did the training, and I ended up finally, after a few years, being the lead mechanic at New England.
So you were a technical guy.
New England Medical Center Hospital. I took care of their heat, their steam, their electricity, their cooling, and the whole thing. So, and I was working 60 or 70 hours a week doing that, but I blew out my knee on the job. And look, man, you know as well as I, you're a musician your whole life, man. You just, it never goes away.
Let me interrupt you there, and I get complaints that I interrupt too much, but it was the same thing. I always felt I toggled two worlds. Like I told you earlier, I went on the road with a band after I graduated from Berkeley and did 2 years, and that was a rough thing. And I said, man, I gotta do something so I don't have to play weddings, So I gotta do what we call a straight job in the music world. So I kind of took 2 courses in basic programming at Bunker Hill Community College, and then fell into a computer job and did 39 years, which allowed me to do more flexibility with music, because we didn't worry so much about benefits back in those days, but we did want that steady income so that we didn't have to play awful gigs, and so I did that, and I played all the original stuff, but I always felt like I was faking it in the computer business, and I became a VP of a large company. It's like,
because in the back of your mind,
back in those days too, the guys who were the managers, and it was all men back then, were 50s guys, so they were like dark suit, white shirt, red tie, and you didn't tell them that you're a musician on the weekends, or Wednesday night you're playing Bunrat.
Best not to.
But as I got older, and I just left the computer business, I had younger managers, 40-ish-year-old guys, and they thought it was cool that I was a musician. But I toggled that, and I'm sure you toggled that.
When I first took the job at New England Medical Center Hospital, I lobbied to get the swing shift. 2 days, 3 to 11, 2 nights, 11 to 7, Sunday, 7 to 3. Why? It gave me Friday and Saturday nights off,
which are sacrosanct.
Which was I can still work, right?
And what year are we talking about?
Okay, so this is in the 80s now. This is in the 80s, coming up to the next blues boom, Stevie Ray Vaughan. Right. And Stevie, like me, Stevie, I'm more
Jimmy. Your age. Right?
I'm more Jimmy, his older brother's age. I'm more Jimmy Vaughan's age, but Stevie and I are close enough, and the same thing. Get the records. He heard from his brother. Look backwards, right? See who it is. Oh, that's Albert King. Oh, that's B.B. King. Oh, that's Freddie King.
But he uses a heavier sound than you do. I want to talk a little bit about equipment.
Yeah.
You're pretty straight through the amp, clean sound, right?
Well,
he was all the way to 11 with
I like to be able
Tube Screamer.
I like to be able to turn the amp up when I can.
Right.
But I've learned a judicious use of this thing, guys. It's called a volume knob.
Most guitar players, it's interesting because I just got this thing fixed because the pickups sounded awful when you did that. A lot of guitars are like that. So now it sounds uniform. There's some sort of patch the guy put in.
Actually, it's called a volume kit. It's a cap and resistor that's soldered across the pot that helps with the taper.
Right. My Les Paul's the same. I think I got to do it for because now it's uniform.
Right. Now it sounds
great.
Same tone.
It's the same exact sound.
Yeah. Which is what you want.
Cool. So we're in the 80s. So who are you playing with then?
So at this point, I had been playing with that band I mentioned before, The Burn, and then I hurt myself on the job.
Right.
At that time, so I had a friend of mine who had a amp repair shop at 1904 Mass Ave, upstairs from Cambridge Music Center in Porter Square.
Oh, over there.
Yeah,
Okay,
right. So, and I got in with this group of guys. The late Jim Meridian had his shop in the same place.
Oh, the guy from Winchester.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was famous. I never met him, but I heard about him.
A wonderful guy and sadly gone. But so I got in with these guys, and my friend Hal Petcher, who had the amp repair shop, used to go to Silas Hubbard's Blues Jam at the 1369 Club in Inman Square.
And let me interrupt there. 1369 Club was a venerable place. More jazz than anything.
But on Sunday.
But serious players.
But on Sunday, kids, an 8-hour blues jam.
If you don't like the blues, that'd be torture.
That's 8, baby. That's not 6.
And what was happening? Did you bring your stuff, or there was always
no, there was
there?
stuff there. You know, you get up and do your thing. So actually, I got to be friends with Hal, and not only was there that one, but we would time it. So we would hit 4 of them. A fellow out here named Pete Henderson.
I played with him 2 weeks ago, right in your hometown, in Millis.
Yep.
He plays at Jasper Hill.
Jasper Hill, right. So
on Sundays.
On Sunday, he has a blues jam, and he's always had a blues jam. So we'd make the rounds. Okay, so we'd go from...
I bet you that improved your playing, too.
Place. Well, you know, you want to get more than one shot. Usually, they're at most blues jams, it's 3 and out, 3 tunes, and next. Right. You know what I mean? So I can do more than that, and I wanted to do more than that. And I was getting over, you know, the injury from work. So what did that give me? That gave me X time on workman's compensation.
Sure.
And then they decided they didn't want me anymore, so they didn't fire me. They laid me off.
Yeah.
So that gave me X time
on unemployment. Right.
So the fateful day came that I decided, look, rock and roll, okay, I've been there and I've done that. I'm really enjoying what I know, and I knew the blues all along. So I boxed up all my rock.
It's like a girlfriend that you go back to. It's like, this is the girl I want to marry.
Right. So I boxed up all my records and went to the record store and traded all my rock records for blues records. And I did what I call, and what I tell my students to try to do, I say immersion. Don't listen to anything for a day but B.B. King. Stay with B.B. King for a day. Stay with T-Bone Walker for a day. Stay with Howlin' Wolf for a day. Don't jump from place to place to place, because you haven't given yourself the chance to assimilate what this guy's putting down. His style, his approach, his taste, right? You have to immerse yourself in that. That doesn't come in a day. You know what I mean? And I would do that. I would rotate off a guy. Okay, T-Bone Walker today. You know what I mean? And that's what I'm staying with. So I built that.
What years? How old?
Okay, so this is in the 90s.
Oh,
so you know
recent
what I mean?
times in my mind.
Yeah, right. So
20 years ago.
So, you know, I'm jumping on the Stevie Ray thing, and that's when there was more of a blues scene in Boston than ever.
Right.
Harper's Ferry, Johnny D's,
Johnny D's.
Ed Burke's,
a
bunch of other places, littler places, but it was popping. It really was, and it was.
Is that where you built your name? Because you have a big name in the greater Boston area as a blues go-to guy.
That's late '80s, early '90s is when I really cut my teeth. I was in a band that called Boston Baked Blues for a while. That's
famous band. I didn't know you were in that band.
Yeah, I was in that. I started that band.
Really?
Another one I started. Okay, so I was in that band, and it was a democracy, kids, and I'll tell you right now that democracies in bands don't always work.
Yeah. The Beatles were a democracy, and actually, it was actually different. It's like all 4 had a vote in the affirmative to do anything. So one member could nix an entire deal. So.
Sadly, with Boston Baked, it wasn't like that. It was time for me to go, and that's when I really started to work. I said, look, I'm not going to be in a band that's under anything else but my name. You know, you can call it ego, but I just wanted to drive the bus.
Sorry to interrupt you. I did that 10 years ago with my acoustic duo. I originally had You know, I was doing bands, but I wasn't getting the calls like I used to about 10 years ago. And I met this young girl, Sarah Thompson, who's a great blues singer. I'd love to get you guys together. She's moved up to New Hampshire right now, and she's going through the period of her life that she's doing a straight job during the day, but I think she'll come back to it. She with
Always
your
do.
band, you know, we always end up
Always do, man.
coming back. But we broke up as a band, and I said, I'm going to be the Bill McGold acoustic duo, and I'm just going to meet other girls, and it's just going to
Make this work.
And now for 10 years, I've become sort of synonymous with acoustic guitar in Greater Boston. And I play all cool gigs.
Your niche.
And I have a lot of people coming to me now,
Right.
female vocalists saying, hey, I want to play with you. So I rotate, you're not going to believe this, 12 different girls. And 150 gigs probably this year. So it's
God
not
bless you.
easy, but, you know,
No,
each
but-
girl has her own sort of repertoire, and I got to learn like 300 songs.
That's
So
always
you
good
did
to
a
keep-
smart thing
that
in the
keeps
90s.
but that keeps us on the ball too. You know what I mean? You don't want to get too
Right.
too complacent about this. You
Right,
know?
it keeps
That-
the edge up.
It keeps the edge up.
So let me. So Ricky King Russell.
Okay.
Where did the King come from?
Steve Morris at the Boston Globe.
He was the venerable music writer
So-
of all time for the Boston Globe.
He gave me kingpin of the Boston Blues. And I
Cool.
said to myself, well, we got a Duke, Robelot.
Right,
We
right.
got a Ronnie Earl. So let's have a Ricky King.
Yes.
Okay, so and that was it. You know, it's
Cool.
just a branding thing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Albert King, Ricky King.
Albert
yeah,
King,
yeah.
Freddie King. I love B.B. King, Saunders King. All the Kings are my guys, so that was a shoe-in.
Cool. We've got about 15 minutes here. I want to try to hit on everything. One thing you mentioned, and I don't even know if you want to talk about this, is some health issues.
Yeah.
You told me you were
I've walked.
400 pounds. I see you right now. I see a tall, lanky, thin guy.
Yeah, well,
Well,
wasn't
can you
always like
talk
that.
about- Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, I don't mind talking about it because it's part of who I am now. In 2003, I had Roux-en-Y gastric bypass surgery,
Uh-huh.
weight loss surgery.
Were you a big kid?
I was a big kid. I was always big. If you knew me from back then,
Because you look
there
like
might be
a
people-
tall, thin guy.
Well, there was a tall, thin guy trapped in there all
Right.
those years. You know, it's funny as you go along through life. Things happen, and when you go see a doctor and you're there and they're talking to your wife about you in the third person,
Right.
not such a good thing.
Right.
You're not such a good thing. And you know, I had tried a lot of things to slim down.
Right.
You know, but my makeup and my chemistry just didn't allow that. You know, I went through periods of thinness for me, and then I went through periods of
I mean, 400 is humongous.
humongous, big. Oh, and believe me,
How'd you get around?
believe
How'd
me,
you
kids, and
carry it?
I'll thank you out there now. My audience was very generous to me because there were a lot of stool nights, sort of the fat guy on the stool thing.
right,
You know
right.
what I mean? Just sort of coasting sort of through the thing. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? But so I had to face the demon, and you know what I mean? And the demon was me in a sense. So I had the surgery, and it was once again fortuitous that I had the surgery because that's when they found gastrointestinal cancer while they were doing it
No way.
in my stomach.
So that's just luck. In some way.
No,
Unlucky
no.
luck, but no, that's luck.
No,
That's real
that's
luck.
total luck, dude. Because otherwise, if I hadn't
would've
had
been
the
too late.
bypass,
It would have been.
this
fourth
would have kept
stage.
going, and we're blowing a hole in my stomach, and that would have been it. You know. So hey, okay, I did it, and you know, I went through the thing. Not the only bout with cancer that I've had. There's been other things. The cancer that they found in my stomach appeared again 19 months later in my liver, and that resulted in a liver resection.
Cancer is everywhere, and it's what gets guys our age cancer and heart attacks.
Yeah, well, the heart thing's not so much anymore because along with losing the weight, my blood pressure went down and my
Oh, cool.
arteries cleared out, sort
Yeah.
of, and my cholesterol went to the right thing. A lot of things came from it. So if you're big out there, peeps, then you might be something you want to consider if you're struggling with that. So since '03, I've walked the walk. I'm still on oral chemotherapy drug that keeps the kind of cancer I have at bay.
Cool.
Allows me to be the fellow you see here.
Dana-Farber, is that where you went?
No, New England. Massachusetts General.
Okay.
Mass General Hospital.
Yeah.
They pulled my they pulled my cherries out of the fire more than once.
I bet,
I'll
man.
say. More than once, and I got to stay right sized about it. You know, you can rule it, or it will rule you. I choose to rule it. It
Right.
is what it is. I'm still here. I still have a voice. I still have some chops left. I still have time, the most valuable thing of all. time to do it, time
Exactly.
to play, time to be here with you today. You know,
It's a great thing that Steve Jobs wrote. The most expensive bed in the world is a hospital bed.
Yeah, sure.
And he was one of the richest guys in the world. And it didn't really buy him anything.
no.
Yeah. And he talked about time being the thing that you cannot buy right now. So tell me the big gigs. I mean, because you've played all kinds of big gigs.
Big gigs.
You've done, and again, like we all have, you've done the small clubs with 5 people. So tell me about
big gigs.
You play with all these cool people.
Big gigs. Working with opening up for Aretha Franklin.
Wow. Where was that?
At the Music Hall in Boston.
The music hall. No one knows what that is,
I
man.
know, but, yeah, okay.
The Wings.
That was doing a solo by myself in front of Steve Miller, just me.
Where? How?
At the Cape Cod Music Tent and the Cohasset Melody Circus. Okay,
Because people don't know this, and maybe people don't even remember Steve Miller, but he's a blues guy.
his father was a doctor,
Right.
right, and he treated Les Paul, Steve's godfather, Les Paul of the Les Paul guitar.
His godfather.
Godfather. And T-Bone Walker, the great T-Bone Walker,
Right.
Stormy Mondays, T-Bone Walker,
Yeah.
was one of his patients. There's a tape circulating around, which I have a copy of T-Bone Walker playing Dr. Miller's house party.
Cool.
And he's just hanging out and people are drinking in the background. You can hear him, hey, play Blues After Hours. That wasn't his song. You know what I
And
mean?
if you listen to Steve Miller, it's blues influenced.
Oh, extremely so. He plays Jimmy Vaughn songs as part of his set now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And he
Stevie
looks
writes
like
all
he's
the-
healthy. He looks like he's playing well.
And you know
I've seen
something?
him-
One of the nicest dudes.
Oh, really?
you ever
Because you
met.
don't see that with a lot of
No,
rock and
he
roll
was
stars.
really nice to me. He got what I was doing. He had me sit at the dinner table with him and the guys and talk about how it was when they'd go to the same stores to buy shoes as the Beatles and stuff like that, what it was like. You know what I mean? They're full of stories up to here. And let me tell you, folks, one of the smartest businessmen in the music business.
So that means he must own his rights and his publishing.
He
and all that
owns his
stuff.
rights and his publishing and holds the record company to a very accurate accounting. Very accurate. They just came to him recently about doing a box set release, and he said, the first thing we're going to talk about is the $600,000 you owe me. And you know what they did? They said, fine, Steve, and wrote him a check.
Yeah.
Because they want the box. That's a smart guy, dude. That's
So we got about 10 minutes left here. We do have a video that I'd like you to talk about. Can you intro the video, what we're going to take a look, listen to now?
I'm lucky enough to get to play with a great group of guys, and it goes under the billing of Ricky King Russell and the Cadillac Horns. And it's myself and my bass player of many years, Bob Worthington, Ken Gardner Jr. on drums, my trumpet player and section leader, Doc Channonhouse, and some of the guys from Roomful of Blues come and work for us and stuff
Phil
like
Pemberton is the guy I know.
that. Phil. Yeah, Phil used to play with my nephew's band
Oh, really?
back.
So this video, check it out.
Yeah, and it's at the Blues Festival in Marshfield,
Cool.
the North River Blues Fest, and it's a cut from there, doing a Guitar Slim song called "They Call Me Guitar Slim."
Excellent.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, they call me Guitar Slim, baby. Come to play in your town. Oh, they call me
So we are back here, and Ricky, what I'd like you to do is look right in that camera, because there's a Ricky King Russell, 12-year-old kid out there right now. What would you be telling that kid right now? What would you be telling him right now?
I would say, A, listen to everybody. If you have a passion for a certain kind of music, dig as deep as you can into that type of music and find out who everyone is, where they come from, how they got there. In the blues idiom, a lot of people just might think, hey, this is really easy, but it might be easy to play as a form. A lot of it's only 3 chords, but to get the right feel for those 3 chords is everything. And I will leave you with this thought of what I think the blues are. The blues is simple music, but it was played by simple people and it was played for simple people. Mm-hmm. Don't try to overthink it. Don't try to overdo it. We get so caught up at being accomplished guitar players where I can put Mixolydian over this, or I can put Dorian mode here. But okay, that's great if you're maybe playing jazzy blues or bluesy jazz. But if you're playing straight Chicago or straight Delta blues, it's not going to sound right. It doesn't belong. Mm-hmm. Don't paint mustaches on the Mona Lisa, and the blues is the Mona Lisa.
Write that one down, kids. I love that.
Don't paint mustaches.
So describe your style.
My style is a synthesis of everything. I have filled up my, for want of a better description, my lick bucket. You know what I mean? I've listened to lots of things, and I've tried to learn lots of things that attracted me and then internalize them. And if you internalize them, they come out at the strangest time. Oh, look at that. T-Bone Walker fits here. I never thought T-Bone Walker would fit here. You know what I mean? So it's a synthesis of a lot of things. And I think any good guitar player, whoever you are, probably plays like that or plays to that sort of idea. You take, in your formative years, you take your concepts, you take your ideas, and adapt them to what you're doing. So as far as my style, it comes from that.
Cool.
It comes from the past.
And you bring it to the future. So let's talk gear. What are you using with it? It looks like a pretty straight ahead, beautiful Stratocaster.
This is an American vintage reissue 56 Stratocaster.
Uh-huh.
Maybe 5 years ago, when at one point this last 5 or 6 years, Fender did a run of a 56 and a 59 and a 60.
And they come close, because I've never really played
this one. They say is about as close as you'll get to taking one off the wall in 56. Nitrocellulose finish, chunky, somewhat V-shaped neck, but like most guys, probably you too. I have a closet full of stuff, and
I saw a bunch of pictures of you, man, and there are 100 different guitars.
I did. I'm
you got
a bit
the
of a
big
rotator.
ones. You got some Les Pauls, I think.
Yeah.
You got all kinds of different.
Yeah, I got
valves.
they're all different colors.
Right.
You know what I mean? But
this is your main one?
No, there's another one that's more beat up than this. This is the one I brought today. So I rotate between 2 maple neck Strats because I like maple neck Strats for one thing.
Right. And I have a Telly, and I love the maple neck. For some reason, it seems to be more soul. I don't know. It's in my brain.
A little spankier sound than.
Just FYI, guys, right here, this is a rosewood. Yeah. You can see it's darker color here. This is Paul Reed Smith, and his is maple, and you can see it. So what else you got? You got this beautiful different quilter.
A Quilter Micro Pro 200 version 1.
Uh-huh.
And as far as Swiss Army knives goes, we were talking about Swiss Army knives before. Yep. This is a Swiss Army knife of an amp.
Yeah.
It does a lot of different things. I probably don't necessarily use it to its full possibilities because I don't need it at its fullest possibilities.
Right.
But you can get a tweed sound out of it. You can get a blackface sound out of it.
Cool.
You can get a high gain sort of, heavy rock.
Yeah, I can see all different buttons.
Things out of it and stuff like that. So once again,
how much does this baby go for?
It's about when I got it was about $1,000.
That's pretty inexpensive. That's a tiny 20 pounds. And again, neither of us, as you can say, are spring chickens. Yeah. So having something very light. My amp's a Fender Blues that is also, and it's actually heavier than. Because it's got a big 12-inch. Yeah. That looks like a 10-inch.
No, it comes with either an 8, a 10, or a 12. This is a 12, a Celestion Lead 80, well broken in.
Yeah.
I've gotten yelled at by more than one sound man on account of this amp.
Being
still too loud. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even on this conservative setting, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Okay, And this was at Laconia, an outside gig. I'm going, really?
So give me current bands, current projects. What are you doing here? He has 4 CDs out, and also tell me how people can get a hold of you.
Okay, so first, what do? I'm lucky enough to play with my own band when I can, Ricky King Russell and the Cadillac Horns. I'm the lead singer, guitarist, and sort of musical director for the Jerry Portnoy Blues Band, the former Eric Clapton and Muddy Waters harp player. I'm lucky enough to play with a very talented group of guys. Ed Shear, the leader and sometimes drummer for a band around here called the Love Dogs. We play a lot at his every Tuesday night All-Stars gig at the Corb Pub in Brighton, Mass.
Okay, my hometown.
Yeah, well, there you go.
I know the Corb right on Market Street.
Right, yep. I get to play with another talented group of people in a quartet called the H-Bomb Quartet that is Ed on drums and his piano player Alison Lassance from Girls Night Out and
that's a
Ed's
big
band
name out there,
and a woman named Diane Blue who's
she's a big name,
currently the lead singer for Ronnie Earl and her own band and her own project. And I'm blessed to get to fit in with a lot of different people. I host a blues jam down at Katie's Tavern in Chepachet, Rhode Island, every other Sunday.
Where's that?
Usually
In
there.
Providence?
No, it's actually closer to the Connecticut border.
Over that way, okay.
It's south of Worcester. If you want due
Okay,
south of Worcester
sure.
down 395, you'd run into Chepachet, and it's a real down-home fun place. We have a lot of fun there. I get called by a lot of people because the blues is my specialty. And especially knowing how to play behind a harmonica player,
Right.
which is a very specialized thing. It's one thing to play blues guitar like B.B. King, and then it's another thing to be able to play behind somebody who does Little Walter tunes and Little Walter Jacobs.
My buddy Bruce Marshall does a lot with James Montgomery, and he's also told me it's a talent too.
It's a thing you have to develop. You know what I mean? Because like Jerry and I have gone out and done duo work together. Now I have to sort of cover. You know what I mean? You have to sort of be in 2 places at once. And
that's what I love doing in my duo right now. It's really just focusing on the female vocalists that I work with, and it's all females that I work with, and playing under them.
Yeah.
Playing right under them.
Yeah. That's the other thing. That's the other thing that I'll leave the studio audience with is I was joking about this thing on the guitar called the volume knob. Well, I went on the road. I won't say who, but I went on the road with some guys, and I was very happy to be on the gig with these guys. The band I always wanted to play with.
Yeah.
And we were riding to Cleveland, where you just came back.
I just came from the
Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We were riding to Cleveland, and the leader was in the back asleep, and the bass player and drummer said, "Hey, you know why you don't get this gig more often?" Wasn't ready for this conversation, but okay. You play too loud, man. You play too loud and your crowd is singing. And he doesn't like his singing to be crowded. Last thing I wanted to hear, Bill, hurt like hell.
Yeah.
It hurt like hell to hear it. But you know something? You learn in life.
And for the kids.
You take your shot, kids. But if you're not doing the right thing, somebody, if they love you enough, will tell you.
Criticism hurts, but it helps.
But it helps. And you know something? From that day forward, I've really learned how to get under somebody.
Well, I mean, we gotta jam out here. We're running out of time, but and I have another part of my life. I'm a pilot, and I used to fly a lot of formation flying.
Yeah.
In formation flying, you never look at your instruments. You look at the other guy's
Where's he going?
wing, and you stay about 5 feet under his wing, and it's just the same as playing with someone. So jam out with something, man. And I want to thank Ricky. We had the King in today, and
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, man.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So
Hope
what do
I
you
can
what do you got to jam out with, man?
You know, you mentioned Route 66 a little
Sure.
while ago,
Yeah,
but let's give it a little bit of the Nat Cole treatment.
Cool,
where it
I'm
came
following
from.
you, man.
This is in B flat kind of a swing.
Go.
1, 2, 1, 2. Highway, that's the best. Get your